I think there's something very profound and maybe irreversible happening to human attention in the digital age. I think it's more than just distraction, and it's more than even just addiction. It could actually be the defining political and moral challenge of our time in grappling with this issue. So I want to start with kind of clearing the ground with an observation that Herbert Simon made in the 1970s. When information becomes abundant, attention becomes the scarce resource. We're only just starting to understand what it means for human life and society. I think a great deal of confusion about the role of digital technologies in the world today comes from the lack of taking this observation into account. And because attention is the scarce resource now, it's now the thing that our technologies mostly compete for. So this attention that we're giving each other right now is literally the object of competition for these things in our pockets. But this whole environment that has emerged in the last several years to compete for our attention in scientific, systematic ways is often called the attention economy. And in the attention economy, our technologies are trying to grab our attention and direct it toward the goals that they have. And often those goals are quite different from our own. If you think about the goals that you have for yourself, I want to spend more time with family. I want to learn how to play the piano. I want to take that trip I've been thinking about and reflect on my life. These are real human goals. But if you look at the goals that technologies have for us, maximize the amount of time we spend, or the number of clicks, the number of times we can scroll or tap, the number of page views on or ad views, things like this. Working in the advertising industry, if any of you have worked in this space, this might be obvious, but there's a deep fundamental gap here between the goals we have and the goals our technologies have for us. And to me, that's the opposite of what technology is for. Technology is for helping us achieve these goals. I think there is this kind of inconvenient truth that we either kind of ignore or maybe don't know about a lot of the time, which is that the attention economy, by and large, is not on our side. Its goals are not our goals. We kind of trust these things to be GPSs for our lives, assuming that they're doing the things that maybe even their marketing projects say they're doing for us. But really, they're directing us toward these petty kind of engagement goals. And this is very well known by the people who create them. The CEO of Netflix a little while back said in addition to Snapchat and YouTube, one of their major competitors was sleep. And then he reiterated it, I think, a month or two ago. Steve Jobs did not let his children use the iPad, right? So there's a knowledge that there are these externalities of the attention economy, so to speak, that are out there affecting the world, but we just haven't taken these into account in kind of our analysis or design of digital technologies. And behind all of this is kind of just the nature of digital technologies, which is amplifying the need for us to kind of bring our own boundaries to the situation. So, for instance, Pokemon Go, where it's this game, and now it's literally all the time, everywhere. So, in the past, a game was this kind of system of interaction bounded in space or time somewhere. The soccer game at this field on this day. But with something like Pokemon Go, it's the game is everywhere all the time. So we have to, the boundaries that were kind of part of the world get pushed onto us. So we have to put those in place ourselves. And like Goethe said, who would be great must be able to limit himself. And I think it's harder for us to achieve that type of greatness now because there's so much more boundary setting in our own lives that we have to do. Another amplifying factor here is something that I often call the treadmill of incompetence. So if you think about the amount of time it took technologies to reach 150 million users throughout history. So the telephone was 89 years, so multiple generations. TV, 38 years, mobile phone, 14 years. As we go deeper and deeper into the digital era, it becomes shorter and shorter to the point where the product may change between the time you use it and the next day, such that you can't ever get to that point of competence. You can't ever master the technology. We're always in this perpetual state of learning. We can do something with the technologies, but not completely master it to bend it toward our own ends. Broadly speaking, what's happened in the last couple of decades is our knowledge of psychology, and particularly our non-rational biases, vulnerabilities in our brain, non-rational dynamics of decision-making. We've developed an enormous catalog of these things. And at the same time, this system has emerged on the internet, a system of measurement, message delivery, optimization, experimentation. And these two kind of trends have come into conversation now in the attention economy. And what this means now is that this industrial scale persuasion is now the primary business model of our first really major global like communications medium. And this isn't widely talked about. We still call companies like Facebook or Twitter social media companies, but they're not selling social media, they're selling our attention. They're in the business of persuasion. But I think another factor that makes this so urgent to look at is because this power to shape people's attention, to persuade people toward one end or another, is increasingly centralized in the hands of just a few people, a few companies in one state, in one country. And it's a weird irony that the whole point of the internet was that it was decentralized in its infrastructure, but then in the platforms that have emerged on it have been so centralized. So literally there are people who would probably fit in this room who have their hands on levers that could control the attentional habits of like over 2 billion people on planet Earth. Like that's really striking to me. What I realized when I was working at Google is looking across the industry at the state of the attention economy and how little it was being talked about in society, and then feeling its effects in my own life, honestly. That, there was more technology around me than ever before, but it was harder somehow to do what I wanted to do. I felt we had made the same mistake that Aldous Huxley talked about when he was lamenting that defenders of freedom in his own time had failed to take into account man's almost infinite appetite for distractions.